And I believe we are
Cool.
live on Facebook.
All right. So I will intro and then we'll just get started talking. Okay, tonight we are thrilled to be joined by Anthony Magnabosco. Anthony's Twitter bio describes him as a skeptic, secular, provisional atheist who imparts the gift of doubt. So we're going to get into all of that, focusing on Anthony's use of street epistemology to have respectful conversations that sometimes lead to people re-examining their deeply held beliefs. And we're going to tie it not just to atheism, but to science communication and all that good stuff. So Anthony, it's great to see you again. We met at QED in October, so thank you for agreeing to come and talk to us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. I've been aware of your show for quite a while. There's one fan in particular who's been trying to get me on your podcast for the longest time. His name is Sean Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little shout out to Sean. Have you seen chatter from him? He's been really trying to get you.
Yeah, and I've been,
I guess, street epistemology on your radar.
Yes. And so he's stoked that we're talking to you. And he and I messaged yesterday, and he brought up exactly what you and I had been talking about the bridge from what you do to sort of science communication topics. So he's totally on the same page as where we're going to head with this. So yes, thank you, Sean, for like,
thank you, Sean. I didn't even put it together when we met each other in England. I didn't even put that together, that this was the same show, that you were the same person that he's been talking about all this time. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Here we are. So all right, I always like to just start before we get into things with sort of origin story of how you got here. Like, what brought you to atheism, skepticism, and then, you know, the path to street epistemology. So tell us who you are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. I guess it kind of all started when I started realizing what the definition of atheist meant and that I qualified for that label. And then I started becoming sort of familiar with the arguments that were out there, the counter apologetics. I started using them myself. But I didn't realize that by using counter apologetics with the loved ones in my life, like families and friends and coworkers, that they don't usually take too kindly to being ridiculed or shown directly how wrong they are. And I ended up losing some relationships because of it. Relationships today that are still damaged, I think, because I was aggressive. I was providing counter apologetics to a very sensitive belief that they held. And then I discovered this method of street epistemology going on 4 or 5 years now. And I was kind of taken aback, thinking, this is an interesting approach that's suggesting having a dialogue with a person, questioning how they form their belief. And it could be a powerful way of helping them reflect on the belief and possibly even lower their confidence. So right around that time, I thought, well, I'm going to try to go out and do some street epistemology. And I failed horribly at it, I think, at the start. But I was recording all of my examples, throwing them on my YouTube channel, and getting feedback from people interested in SE and people interested in all different sorts of disciplines who were giving me feedback. And this method, I think I've gotten a lot better at it. People have been watching the videos. People have actually been watching the videos and being encouraged to go out and try the method. People have been watching the videos and applying the questions that I ask to their own beliefs and even lowering their confidence in these types of beliefs. So kind of a weird, unorthodox start, I guess, to it, but it's been kind of an eye-opening experience, and I'm really encouraged by the direction that this seems to be taking everybody.
And can you give sort of a working definition of what street epistemology is?
Sure. So street epistemology is essentially a dialectical approach for challenging a person's belief without raising the backfire effect, and helping a person think about the method they use to conclude that the belief is true, and doing so on good terms so that you might have an opportunity to meet with them again. It's not about ridiculing or debating or even preventing them with evidence that shows that they're mistaken. And it seems to be quite effective, and not just like with an atheist talking to a theist. And I'm really excited to be on your podcast to talk about how this tool might be applicable for all sorts of different beliefs.
Yeah. And one thing, you know, you point out that these conversations they're respectful and everything. And some of the feedback, I was talking to you before we started, where I told my boyfriend that we were interviewing you. So he looked you up on YouTube and was watching the videos. And he's like, this guy has so much patience. I
Right.
don't think I could do this.
That's exactly what I said.
And so do you get that a lot, that response?
Yeah, a lot of people will comment or message me and say, "How do you have the patience to listen to nonsense and not and resist the urge to argue with them or show that they're mistaken?" And it was a learned process. I have examples that show where I slipped out of street epistemology mode and fell into counter apologetics. And let me show you how mistaken you are. But when you do that enough and you start to realize how disadvantageous it is, it's a feedback loop, I guess. So it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's information back to you to suggest that, well, maybe you kind of got off track here. So it does take time. I still get upset sometimes, but I try to remind myself that getting upset, showing that I'm getting frustrated, will only deter the conversation. So if my goal is to help the person, then I've come to realize that being irate with a person or showing frustration, showing that I'm getting, a little perturbed by what they're saying is not overall good for the discussion. So it's a learned thing. And I do think most people can learn it.
Yeah. And so as far as the goal of these conversations, because you set your timer for 5 minutes, and I love that a lot of your YouTube videos are way longer than 5 minutes because
Right.
it seems like the people are engaged with you in these conversations. So what do you want somebody to walk away from these conversations feeling?
Oh, what do I want them feeling? That's a good question. Well, I certainly don't want them to feel embarrassed, and I don't want them to feel stupid. Maybe humbled would be a good thing that I would like them to walk away with, or sort of a realization that, I really could have worded that better, or maybe I'm not as prepared to defend this belief as I thought that I was. And I'm grateful for that conversation. So maybe those are some of the feelings that I would hope a person walks away from one of my conversations. I don't know if that's the case. It seems like it is because I do get a lot of feedback from people, and they tell me how much they enjoy the talk and it was helpful. And many people will message me to say that I don't have the belief that we talked about anymore. I've significantly lowered my confidence in that belief. So, well, I think at first it might be a little unsettling for people. In the long run, people tend to really appreciate the talk, and they usually report that they feel like they're a better person for having it.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah, and what I've kind of from watching a few of your videos and getting an idea, because it's a pretty new concept to me too. It seems like it's less focused on what you believe rather than, and instead focuses on the pathway to why. I think I definitely see value in that approach and what you do and how you talk to these people, because you're for one, starting a dialogue, like you said, and not a debate, a dialogue. So they already don't feel defensive. They feel like they can be more honest with you, more open with you, and that they're not going to be judged or ridiculed, like you said. But then also it for a lot of people more effective to do that, because then you get them questioning the why, and you're planting that seed of doubt. And that's really all. We've talked to, I don't know how many different people that have gone through some sort of deconversion, and it's always been, well, I had a conversation and went home and thought about it and went, well, shit, I don't know the answer to that. It just kind of all unravels from there. So that makes a lot of sense to go about it that way.
Cool. That's cool. I'm glad that you're seeing other stories of people reporting that, because that does seem to be the case. Like, people do enjoy talking about what they believe, and they occasionally will be asked to explain why they think it's true, but very rarely are they asked to explain how they determined that they used a reliable method to conclude that it's true. And those seem to be like the powerful questions that stay with a person. And a large part of SE is to impart seeds of doubt, to ask a question that helps a person reflect on it, not necessarily then and there, But later, when they have some time to think about the conversation and they want to be honest with themselves and believe true things. Yeah, I'm really enamored with the approach, and I greatly enjoyed doing it.
And it's amazing to see going into the conversations how confident a lot of people are in their beliefs. And they are very certain. Like I was watching one, I forgot her name beforehand, but she was a Muslim woman and I think she said she was like 9.5 out of 10 confident in her belief that Allah was the true God. And and that seems like a pretty common thing, that amount of confidence that people have in their deeply held beliefs.
Yeah, I think we try to, so just to take a step back, yeah, when we have these conversations, generally a lot of people don't do this, and you don't have to ask where a person is in their certainty or their confidence that a belief is true. But I like to ask a scale, because if somebody says, I'm 20% sure Allah is real, then I'm going to ask different questions than a person who says, I'm 99.5% sure that Allah is real. Yeah, just asking the question, how sure a person is, can be startling to some people. It is preferable, I think, when somebody is honest with reporting their confidence. So I do think that some people, especially if they know that they're being filmed and they're on camera, they might actually give a number that they don't necessarily think. They may just say that they're 100% sure that this belief is true because they think that maybe I'm expecting a high number.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to assure people that, hey, try to give the number that you really think your confidence is on this belief. You don't have to give me a number that you think I want to hear, or you think that society is asking you to profess. And I think that's helping a little bit, and people providing a more honest number. But it's hard to say. I mean, they could still be lying to me or to them. It's hard to say.
It's like they're virtue signaling their own virtues.
Maybe, yeah, maybe so.
And
it does.
Yeah, and
it's somewhat revealing, though, like when you start asking questions, and if they're struggling to provide a reason why they think the belief is true, yet they said that they were 100% sure that it was true. It's sort of a defeater. Like you start to realize, well, maybe they really weren't 100% in the first place if they're struggling to provide a reason.
And then that's a point in time where you go, checkmate, right? Am I doing this right?
Well,
no. Okay.
I don't try to say, aha, I got you. This isn't like trying to trap people. It's really trying to assess where they are in their certainty, find out what reasons are really propping up the belief, and testing the reliability of that method they used with them. Like, this is supposed to be a partnership type of thing where you're working with them, and I don't want to be an adversary. Yes, I might not hold the same view as you. I may think that what you believe is ridiculous. However, let's work together to figure out if it's true, because if it's true, then I would want to be open to that and possibly believe it also, if you have a good reason, if you've used a good method for coming to that conclusion.
And it's like you're entering this partnership and conversation with them where you're not like advising them exactly on how to change their belief. You're listening to them. And there was this one woman, Carrie, who I think she comes up if you go to your YouTube channel, and that video, I think that was the first one I saw that played right away. And what I was there were a few points to her conversation with you that I think I want to point out, but one is just how open she was with you about how you're talking about God and how she believed there was a higher power, but part of her story was attributing her belief in that higher power to her ability to leave a troubled marriage. And it was amazing watching somebody where, she did that on her own. She, but she believed that it was because God in some way, or a God in some way.
Yeah. And if I said, listen, Carrie, and that video is the first one that shows up on my channel. It's one of my favorite. And I think it's a really good example of street epistemology. And yeah, but my telling her, listen, Carrie, you were strong. You survived that marriage. You did this on your own. There weren't any gods that did that. She's not going to probably listen to what I say. She might politely listen and nod and say, oh, okay. but more than likely that would be a very scary thought for her. So more importantly, really is to analyze how she concluded that it's true. And a large part of that conversation was, how did you determine that it's true? And if I remember, she mentions faith. I don't think we spent all that much time on it, but no, I think as we get into it, she reveals that it's a comforting thought to believe that it's true. And it's a scary thought to believe it's a scary thought to think that it might not be true, that there's a God out there. And it seemed kind of came down to comfort and fear.
Yeah, and she also was one that brought up, because I made a note of it, she believes in a soul, because she doesn't seem to want to think that there's nothing after this life, because that's sad to her and whatever. And so you see people just talking about the comfort that it brings them, which it makes sense.
Oh yeah, and I think acknowledging the comfort that she gets from the belief is critical. Like just saying, "Oh, come on, you're not getting comfort from this. This is just a made up thing." No, she probably really does get comfort from the belief. So I think acknowledging that is very important. One avenue I think you can go with a person like that is to ask them if they know of anybody who has survived a difficult marriage or a difficult time without believing in a higher power. More than likely, people know other people who don't believe in any gods, especially these days. And you can use that friend or that other family member that they know and start talking about them. How do you think they're getting through difficult times without believing that a higher power helped them?
Alcohol. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about me. My bad. Let's just move on to the next question.
But so Carrie, though, by the end of all of that,
back to Carrie.
She said to you, though, like in a way that seems so genuine, that it was just nice to be listened to, is what she told you. And so that's where, like, I wrote that down, because I thought that could be where we, move into talking about not just topics of spiritual faith, but other kind of, our common topics of science and pseudoscience and all that, because everybody just likes to be listened to, right? I mean, that's.
I think so. Yeah, I think
that's why we made a show here.
Yeah. I think people do like to be listened to. I think people like it when you repeat back what they've said. So you're validating what they're telling you. And if you're mistaken, they can correct you. Yeah, listening is a very big part of SE, because if you want to formulate a good question, you need to be paying very close attention to what a person's saying. And if I remember with that example with Carrie, I don't think I even asked what she thought about the talk. I think she even just volunteered it, which is even really nicer when somebody says, I really like that talk. It was really nice to be listened to. And I think she even went on to say that she wished more people would do that on tricky topics like politics and religion and that type of stuff. So yeah, it was a good talk. And listening to a person is crucial, like I said, because you want to be able to ask good questions.
And so really, I'm going to look to you for some advice because of your communication style and all of this. It's like, I mean, we know science sometimes has a communication problem, in that there's the facts and evidence and all of that, whether it's scientific consensus on things like vaccines or GMOs or whatever. Yet we still have so many people who just believe contrary to what evidence says. And so then the task of anybody who is sort of advocating for science, or even just critical thinking in general, is how to communicate with people without experiencing that frustration level or argumentative type of thing. Like, how do we bring what you do to, what we do?
Well, that's a really good question too. So I was thinking about this prior to coming on, because I thought you might ask something along those lines. And I started thinking about the assumptions that people in science tend to make, these science communicators, or people who just are enamored with science and think, oh, if I just send my uncle this study on global warming, they're going to change their view. And having had talks for almost 5 years now, there's a lot more fundamental questions, I think, that have to be addressed before you decide to present a person with evidence. One of the first things that comes to mind is, does the person that you want to either change their mind or have them be more open to a new idea, do they want to believe true things? That's one of the first things that I think most people just assume, is that, well, everyone wants to believe true things. If I just send them this report, they'll be convinced and change their mind because this is true. Look, not everybody wants to believe true things, shockingly. And very sad.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with anything happening anywhere else in our government or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about people who say, yeah, you know, if there was a study that showed that, I don't know, something wasn't true, I wouldn't want to believe it, because my life is better believing this. And they'll double down on that and actually think that way. But so that's sort of the first thing. Another thing is making sure that people view truth in objective terms, so that what's true in Texas is also true in, Russia, for example. So a lot of people will say that, well, it's true for me.
Yes.
And they say, you can have your own truth.
That's
fine. You have a right to have your own truth. And people are viewing truth as opinions and preferences. And that's very dangerous. So before you even spend any time on a deep topic like, I don't know, vaccines or global warming or any of the topics that were in the movie, you want to make sure that they view truth in objective terms and they value it. So well, that's probably the first thing. The other thing, okay. Well, I was going to say another thing is, will I be ostracized from my tribe if I disclose that I no longer believe this thing that my tribe believes? A lot of people will hold on to a belief or not even entertain that their belief might not be true, because they couldn't stomach the thought of not being a part of the group that they're in, whether it's a church or it's the Flat Earth Society, or just that their close family members all believe in a deity, for example. It would be very difficult to say that I don't believe what everyone else around me believes. So those are some of the basic things that I think most people don't even consider, that are very, very important. And a few simple questions at the start to assess where a person is can be very useful, a very good time saver as well, before just jumping in and providing somebody with facts. My advice for science communicators and for people that are interested in science is, do a little legwork first and make sure that the person that you're speaking with actually values evidence, and that the belief that they're currently holding is based on evidence. They may very well say that it is, but oftentimes it's not. It's based on an emotion, or it's based on a sense of community and that type of thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is a lot of the I consider like anti-vaccine, anti-GMO, flat Earth, climate change denial. They're all religions, because they are deeply held beliefs by these people that are not supported by evidence, at least the evidence that I've seen or that's available to actual scientists. And so when you exactly like you're saying, what you're doing is you're bringing evidence to an emotional debate, and with somebody who, in that moment on that subject, at least, whatever it may be, does not necessarily value evidence in that realm, because a myriad of factors. If it's religion, if something they to think that, well, for 20, 30, 40 years of my life, I've believed in a lie, and they don't want to, they're not ready at that point in their life to come to terms with that, or to accept that, or to acknowledge that, or to whatever the situation may be. So like just like you said, you're never going to win an emotional debate with somebody with evidence, because they don't value evidence in at least in that form, in that argument.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Very early on, just try to get a sense of if the person values evidence. What evidence are you basing your belief on? And if they say a piece of evidence, ask them if they would still hold the belief to a high degree of confidence if they discover that that evidence was unreliable. And if they say yes, then that evidence that they've stated earlier is not relevant. You can move on to something else. There's something else propping up the belief. And it might be other evidence. Ask the same question. Keep asking the question until you identify what would influence their confidence. Once you hit that, once they say, oh, now that, yeah, if that could be shown to my satisfaction, that that's not true, then I think I would lower my confidence in that. Okay, now you have something to work with. Don't just start throwing data at people if it's not going to have any impact on their belief. So have a discussion first about what would change their mind. Let them tell you what would change their mind. Don't just say, would this change it? Would this change it? Would this change it? No, let them tell you.
See, I like that approach rather than, just approaching them armed with, here's some studies and here's some data and here's all the answers. I have the answers for you. I like your approach, and I guess something I tried to do with the Science Moms film is, not change somebody's mind after 26 minutes of them watching the film. But if there's somebody on the fence about some of these issues, maybe they walk away thinking a little more critically. And like Dan said before, planting seeds of doubt, or, changing someone's mind. It's not something that happens in the span of a conversation. Because I like the idea better of somebody changing their own mind rather than us being the active mind changers. I don't know how to exactly articulate it, but that it's on the individual to come to that on their own.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of goes back to the whole listening thing. If you're asking them to provide you with the evidence that would change their mind, well, you're showing them that you're listening, and that's a good thing. And you're letting them do the legwork. And I'm reminded of a scene in your movie. I know that you were showcasing it at QED. I wasn't able to make it for the show. I don't know what I was doing. Maybe it was a workshop for SE, but I bought it, and there was a great scene where one of the ladies was she was like in a park, and there was a protest going on.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I don't know what, I'm not actually sure who it was, but somewhere along the line, somebody was yelling about the personal experience they had, and that's why they were against maybe vaccines. I'm not exactly sure.
It was a March Against Monsanto event. So it was GMO stuff. It was GMO stuff.
Okay.
And then organic diets, cure stuff.
Like,
yeah.
She yells, personal experience is not science, right? Something like that. And I thought that was great. And it reminded me of my time when I was yelling at street preachers who would be out in front of the Alamo, and I was saying, faith is unreliable. Faith is unreliable. And it just reminded me of that time. But when you think about the effectiveness of that exchange, whether it's talking about GMOs or me yelling at a street preacher, it's not going to be as effective as having a dialogue with that person and asking them, can you please explain to me why you're so against GMOs? What is it that you've read? What is your best piece of evidence? If you discover that evidence was unreliable, would you change your mind? And then you can start having a dialogue. And I think that would be a much more effective approach. And I'm raising that to embarrass anybody. I mean, I've done that myself, and that's our typical reaction. Let me just show this person, tell them how stupid they are and what they're believing. But it's not gonna change that person's mind. That person is probably, maybe even at the time, was probably more resolute that they were doing the right thing by standing out there and protesting.
Do you think that there are people whose minds are unchangeable?
Ooh. Yeah. I think that there are some minds that are probably unchangeable, unfortunately. I do think the vast majority of people's minds are changeable, but they need to, in all cases, they are the ones that need to change their mind. You can have a dialogue, you can plant a seed, But if they're not willing to water the seed, then it's not going to germinate, and they're not going to reflect on the belief, and they're going to probably just walk around with that mistaken belief. I also think that there's probably, I would love to see a study on this, but I do think older people tend to be a little bit more set in their ways than younger people. So you might get a better bang for your buck if you were talking to people who were university students and maybe in their 30s and kind of in that age range, possibly. Yeah. But I'm somewhat optimistic when it comes to it. Like, I think for the most part, I think most people, if they're willing to be honest with themselves and you, and they're willing to entertain the possibility that that they could be mistaken, I do think that most of those people they're definitely worth the time to have a talk with. When a person is older, if they're more set in their ways, if they've had this belief for a long time, if they don't see any alternative, like, what would my life be like if I didn't have this belief? That could be a very scary thing. So, so if there's an active community of people who don't share that belief, that are there to welcome them, to receive them, to comfort them during that transition, I think that's very important. So, yeah, I think I trend more on the optimistic side, but yeah, I do think that there are some people who it's just better to move on. Why would I want to spend 10 hours hitting my head against the wall when I can have 10 good conversations with, other people?
Yeah, kind of like the more movable middle people on the fence who are at least willing to re-examine and be open to questioning their beliefs.
I mean, if we talk to the people who are more willing to think about their belief and honestly examine it, then that shifts everything. And that might expose the radical people a little bit more. It might make them more susceptible to change if they see the population going in one direction. Some people, I think, enjoy being the odd person out. This belief makes me different. I'm unique because I have it. And when somebody's getting their identity from the belief and they're special, they feel that they're special because they're believing something contrary to what most people believe, then that adds some complexity to it.
Yes. I mean, all of it kind of just shows how complex people are, but also like so similar in so many ways, where people they want to be listened to. They want to feel connected and part of a community. So beliefs remain a lot of times because of that community aspect. So it's like there's work that can be done on so many levels but also that they can still have space in this world and be welcomed if they change, even a core part of who they are. So being parts, and yeah, our friend Matthew Fasciani asked a question in my Facebook post asking if there was any evidence that this works in terms of, like, he was looking for social psych type of research or things like that, if it is something that, has there been any research done on it?
Right now, we have no research on street epistemology other than personal anecdotes and videos that people are uploading. And I even try to warn people not to draw too many conclusions from my videos because I don't upload every video. I had 5 conversations yesterday. I might upload one of those in the next couple of days. And so what about the other 4? Well, they were still good, I think, but maybe not the best representation of SE. So no, there are no formal studies of this. A lot of people have noticed what we're doing and saying, hey, wait a second, that's motivational interviewing. We use that for people who are struggling with drug addiction and alcohol abuse. And they're noticing patterns, like the repeating back of questions and the pausing and challenging the person's the belief formation process rather than the behaviors that they see as a result of it. So I do think that there have been some studies on motivational interviewing. A friend of mine who is a psychologist who knows MI very well sent me studies. I haven't looked at them yet, but as far as a study on SE, there's nothing. Right now with SE, I think we're kind of in this like proof of concept phase. Somebody wrote a book, somebody's making videos. Well, many people are making videos now. People are having all these conversations. We're reporting back what seems to be effective, but it's getting interest. So for example, like a podcast such as yours is bringing people like myself on so we can talk about it. But hopefully we get people who are looking for something to study, who are in academia that can study this and maybe even put some money behind it so we can look into it, because it's possible that this doesn't work. By all indications, it does seem to work, whatever work means. That's a whole other topic. But it does seem to be effective. I mean, there's something special going on in these videos, and there's something special going on in the conversations that I'm having, because people tell me afterwards that it was an impactful conversation. But there's nothing quantifiable. And as a skeptic and as somebody who appreciates science, we have to get to that phase where we look at it.
And so if somebody is like listening to this conversation and wants to get involved with street epistemology, because what is your recommendation, or where and how can they learn more about it?
Sure. Go to streetepistemology.com, and under resources, there is an SE guide. It's like a 30-page cheat sheet of what SE is all about and how to learn it, how to practice it. And then there's also links to all these different groups. There's a Facebook group called, it's a private street epistemology Facebook group. I think there's almost 5,000 members, and you can join that. There's a couple different variations of the groups that are out there. So if you're looking for people who are wanting to learn it, they're studying it, they're employing it, and they're sharing their experiences, that is the place to go. I'm constantly learning from the posts that people are putting in that group. So go to the website, go to resources. There's a blog there. There's even a link to an app that you can put on your phone, and you can teach yourself this method as well.
Oh, awesome. And we can put links to that like in our show notes and everything. And so, obviously, like you go to conferences, you do all of your videos. You're a busy guy. Like, what are your goals for this for yourself? Like, what's next for you?
Well, I do have a talk coming up. It's going to be in Oslo, Norway.
Ooh.
And I'm still.
So if you're in the neighborhood,
tuning. What's that?
I said, so if I'm in the neighborhood, I might stop by.
Yeah, just swing on by. We'll go skiing together or something. It's supposed to be really cool. I live in Texas, and I have to I'm going to bring a coat, buy a coat so I can go. January in Oslo, Norway. It should be fun. But I'm giving a talk there, and I think the gist of my talk is going to be sharing the importance of this method, but also encouraging people to pass along SE, street epistemology, as a tool set, that this isn't just to challenge a person's belief, but teach people how to use it, whether they believe in a God or not, whether they think GMOs are harmful or not. Teach people how to use it for very simple, non-threatening beliefs. And ultimately, I think they'll start using it for the bigger ones, for the bigger claims.
Yeah. And that's why, I wanted to have you on, and I was so happy to have this conversation, because I hope that, the people that are listening kind of understand how, they can go watch your videos and see how it can connect to conversations we have about so many different topics. So I really appreciate you coming on and, to just talking it through with us. And
yeah, this is really nice to be on. And I'd love to. I wish we can kind of chat longer, but I know you probably have a hard time end. But yeah, I'm really excited to be on your show and introduce this method if you haven't heard of it already. Like, we've kind of saturated the atheist market with this method, and a lot of people are picking up on it and using it. We've been attending skeptic conferences, and I think like the science community is probably the next stepping stone in that journey. So I'm really eager and to talk about it, and honored, honestly, to talk to that group.
And I mean, as we're sitting here and talking, I'm thinking like, how nice would it be to maybe even try to have you come back sometime and kind of talk us through what it would look like to do a street epistemology style discussion over not a faith topic, but a sciencey topic, just to.
I've been trying to encourage people to select. Well, I always ask. Well, lately I've been asking people, pick the topic that you'd like to discuss, and I give them all sorts of things. Can we talk about GMOs? Do you want to talk about karma? Do you want to talk about vaccines cause autism? Your view on burning the American flag? Do you want to talk about a God? And so many people, at least in my area, don't want to talk about politics or social issues. They would rather talk about a supernatural belief. Like, they think it's safer. Even the God one seems to be preferable than talking about the current administration. And that's a little it's a little interesting. I don't know if that's just a geographic thing, or maybe it's just the way that I'm presenting myself. But I would love to have it. My point is I would love to have some examples to show you, so that maybe we can even play one and do a breakdown on it.
See, that'd be cool. What if you set up at like
bring that topic up generally?
What if you set up at like a farmer's market or something?
Now that's the thing. The venue selection is key, I think, to helping a person select the topic that I wanted to talk about. So I think if I wanted to talk about Bernie Sanders, for example, I would go to a Bernie Sanders rally. If I wanted to talk about Donald Trump, go to a Donald Trump protest or a Donald Trump rally.
Yeah.
Going to protests and things are good for finding the people that you want to speak with, but they're horrible for having polite, respectful conversations just because everyone's amped up.
The atmosphere.
They're trying to.
Yeah,
they don't want to lose face in front of their friends. So it's good for finding people, but I wouldn't necessarily advise you to have the talk then and there. Like, ask if they can meet you for coffee down the street and have a one-on-one talk. And I think it would be far better than doing something out in the field like that.
Yeah. I was just thinking of like Penn and Teller bullshit episodes where they were talking like about organic food or GMOs or something. And they taped some of the show in at a farmer's market, and were kind of just, people were taste testing food to see if they knew it was organic or not. And guess what? They were wrong most of the time. But just that kind of setting, I guess you're right though. The setting lends itself at least to who you might want to talk to. But yeah. But when you have some videos on these topics, we should do a
on GMOs and vaccines and all the other good stuff that's in your movie. Then I will let you know. Because I think that could be really exciting. And honestly, the types of questions that I would ask wouldn't be much different than a faith-based claim.
Yeah.
You still need to listen. You need to understand what they believe, why, and how they're so sure. They may not raise faith as a method. They may say, I read an article or somebody told me. But you can still ask questions that challenge the reliability of the method they used. Absolutely.
So I think we will probably end up doing another show with you in the future. But for now, if people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you? Twitter, Facebook, that kind of stuff.
Best place to find me really is to go to Twitter, search for my last name, Magnabosco, and you should be able to find me. I usually tweet several times a day. If I have a new video, I tweet a link to the video, and you can find the link to my top 10 videos in the bio of my Twitter. And yeah, that's probably the best way to reach me. And I'm accessible too. So if you have any questions, if you have an idea for a study, if you hate what I'm doing, if you love what I'm doing, please reach out to me. I try to be as responsive as possible. And that's how I've grown, I think, is from the feedback of critics and people who enjoy what they see. So please reach out. Don't hesitate.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon. I'm sure even just on social media. So yeah, thank you.
I really look forward to it. And yeah, I would love to be on your show again.
Awesome. All right. Dan, we'll stop recording. Anthony, like that, I feel like we could talk to you for like a really long time.
Totally.
I
thought that went great.
Your stuff,
I just realized I was muting my Google Hangout mic when I was coughing, and I'm thinking the Zencast mic was